just going to do a quick review video of the South Africa A versus the British and Irish Lions game from last week. So this game that was played was billed as South Africa A, whereas you look at the team that was named, it was effectively the starting South African team in all but name, really, bar one or two sort of key individuals who will come back in for the Springboks later on, like Andre Pollard, Mazola Mapimpi, Dwayne Vermeulen, and a couple of others here or there as well, Bongo and Benambi as well. But in fairness, it was a massive step up in intensity for the Lions as compared to the other provincial games that they've played. It's all well and good playing Sigma Lions and the Sharks a couple of times, and then the Stormers, and putting 40 plus points on provincial teams which are really underpowered. South Africa had called up a significant squad, 35 plus man squad for the Georgian games. They only managed to get one of those games on, and then they arranged to play the Bulls actually the weekend of. I think it was the week where the Bulls were not able to play the Lions themselves, and they played South Africa instead. And actually, I think they beat South Africa, South Africa after that as well. But a quite strong South Africa A team. In tours gone by, normally you would see the Lions play either South Africa under 21s, or as they used to be called, the emerging Springboks. But this team was definitely sort of giving squad players some rugby under their belt, and also trying to get some of the South African players match sharp and sort of test match intensity as well. And overall, they would be over the moon with the win. South Africa winning the game 17 points to 13, and looking at the game overall, you could pretty much sum the game up as the Lions halfback pairing of Murray and Farrell didn't do them any favours at all. I think Farrell really played himself out of contention for the first test, to start the first test, whereas he'd started in the 2017 tour. Murray, likewise, as well, was really poor behind a pack which didn't really have an awful lot of parity, apart from a good scrummaging performance by Wyn Jones. Tom Curry was pretty good. Naveed, he was alright. Toje was okay too, but I mean, the pack as a unit wasn't very cohesive, didn't really sort of, step up to the South Africans really, and they didn't really win the game line or the collisions as much as what they would hoped. But for Murray, being earlier on named as tour captain, it's quite a disappointing performance. His box kicking was either way too far or not too deep, or when he was selected to box kick, it was just non-competitive for the winger. Now, despite the fact that South Africa are a very good team who like to, they like to sort of check the runs and escort people to the sort of landing zones where the box kicks are coming through, to allow people like Colby, who's pretty good in the air actually, and Ngozi on the other wing as well, to catch the ball. But I just think that the majority of the kicking was absolutely shocking. And going into a little bit of depth about the game, the first try for South Africa A came from a charge down where the Lions had actually broke the line. They managed to get some go forward. They then started to try to play around the South African press defence. Farrell reverted to his Eddie Jones England type, and when under pressure, instead of trying to take it up or trying to beat a man, he tried to kick the ball over to the winger's side to either Reece Samet or to Andy Watson, and got charged down by the second row Exabeth, and then the ball spilled and it went from DLN, the centre, all the way to Ngozi, and he pretty much 65, 70 metre run in then, and managed to get that. So that was directly from pole kick selection as well. The second one was via a turnover actually, and so the Lions are turned over, South Africa pretty much around the 10 metre line in their own half. Ball comes out, he gets pulled back to Elliot Daly, who's a left-footed kicker. He's got quite a big boot on him as well, Elliot Daly, but unfortunately, at this time, with the turnover, I know the Lions, and particularly Gatland's, Wales' teams, used to like to try and kick the ball and keep the ball on the field if possible. But this kick was another shocker, and the left-footed kick came across way too deep, too much height on there. You know, he wasn't going for distance or anything like that. But waiting back there was Chesley Colby, and you know, pretty much it's like kicking to the worst person on the field really, to try and counter-attack against you. You know, it's so hard to defend, and you know, typical Colby, brilliant turn of pace, a sidestep to get outside of Chris Harris, and you know, again another player I think has pretty much cost himself a sort of test contention start really by that performance. Not to say that he didn't do anything awfully wrong, but didn't do enough. Didn't show that he could better his opposite man. And Lukanyuam, the captain of the South African A, managed to finish off a brilliant break by Chesley Colby, and I thought he was impressive throughout Lukanyuam. Brilliant tackle as well on, I think it was on Resamit as well in the game. The Lions did come back in fairness. I mean, there was an obvious tactic which you could see just before half time. South Africa were carded for incredible cynical defence, which was basically multiple offsides where first yellow card was Faf de Klerk. I thought was very unlucky to a point where he had charged in on a Lions player and made contact with the head. He had a yellow card, and then immediately after it, then a cynical offside from a tap and go penalty. You had another yellow card, so South Africa they were down to 13 men. Now, even with a two-man obvious numerical superiority, you would think, go for the scrum. If you don't push them over with 7 men, certainly you'll get around them with 6 in the back line. All you have to do is draw and give, and you're in the corner. But the Lions obviously must have had a pre-planned sort of work on, which was to keep any sort of moves up their sleeves, go toe to toe with the South Africans, drain them of any sort of legs and resources, and tap and go exercise style to try and get over. Now, just before half time, Wayne Jones was held up, and I thought I was pretty unlucky that they should have been another offside and they could have had another go, but Jaco Piper was incredibly lenient towards his fellow countrymen in this game. Not to say that there was anything too dodgy going on in the game, but it's just the sort of familiarity of refereeing certain faces week in, week out, and that's just how it is. I mean, he's used to knowing how culturally South Africa play rugby, and he's a referee. He's used to seeing what he sees and what type of penalties he's looking for. And unfortunately, the Lions fell on the wrong side of him. And just after half time, the Lions got a little bit of change in the end. Finally made their two men supremacy pay. Wayne Jones went over for a try, which was well deserved. He was pretty good. Wayne Jones did look as if he had a bit of a stinger on his shoulder though, which was a big shame. But I think overall, South Africa, they didn't really do anything to. It's not as if they tried to score from 65 yards or 70 yards. They were very much played to type. South Africa, they very much how the Springboks will play in the first test and throughout the test series, which is, uncompromising, very simple Springbok rugby, which is do not play rugby in your own half. And if you are in your own half, you kick and chase hard, you force the opposition into errors, and then when they make an error, you are then free from a turnover, penalty advantage or not, to throw the ball wide or to pick up scraps from the opposition where they've allowed you in. And certainly the two tries in this game showed that. I mean, the game was effectively won at half time, um, with the two sort of breakaway tries really. Um, and the Lions only had themselves to blame. South Africa, though, would be worried. I would say, from a coaching point of view, that they didn't look as if they could score really from any sort of sustained phase pressure. They didn't really build up any, sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, phase sort of patterns of play. Like I said, there's a lot of aerial kicking. They certainly won the aerial battle. Faf de Klerk's kicks were a lot better. You had Mornay Stain, the old head there. He played that role excellently, I think. Um, but they didn't seem to look as if they could score off first phase. Even with an attacking line-out, they just would revert back to typical old South African style: catch and drive, muscle, arm wrestle. Let's have an arm wrestle here. Let's have an arm wrestle at the scrum. Let's have an arm wrestle at the breakdown. So there was a distinct lack of any subtlety and direct cutting edge. And it's a shame, really, because you've got players available to you with talent that don't necessarily get the sort of game plan together, most out of them, particularly the back line. However, South Africa's strength traditionally is obviously in the pack. Um, but I mean, overall, the Lions, to take away from this, I mean, it is a defeat. They wouldn't have wanted to lose a game on tour. Ultimately, it's the Test series that really matters. I mean, the Lions lost I think they lost two midweek games in New Zealand against the Blues, and they beat the Crusaders. Was the other one they lost to? It might have been the Highlanders, I think. I know they certainly lost to the Blues on that tour, but nobody really cares about those games, apart from obviously the provincials who remember it for 12 years, but over there. But Lions went over to draw the series in New Zealand in the end when people were saying that they were going to get walloped 3-0. And I think this result really will only matter if the Springboks win the first Test. So I think Warren Gatland, the coach, afterwards said that the Lions would take a lot of heart from the game. I think he is right in saying that. He does tend to tell you the truth, whether you like it or not, and doesn't try to spin it. I think South Africa has shown their hand quite a bit. They've shown what they are. They haven't got another dimension. I just think that by not playing rugby for 2 years, you're not going to radically change dimension within a week between this game, which will play the majority of your squad, and then the big one, which is the first Test. That's just not going to happen. You will refine what you're good at. You will refine your breakdown, your scrum, your line-out, your driving maul. You'll refine your blitz defence, and you'll refine your sort of living off scraps and attacking off, turnover transition. That's what they do. That's what won them the World Cup effectively. So, overall 17-13, decent game. Frustrating for the Lions. Good win for South Africa in the end. Well deserved, very physical, but the intensity that both teams needed as well. So, in their own ways, I think both teams will go away happy. Just be interesting to see what Lions players we will see again back in red, because now that the Test series starts, some of the boys I think played their last game of the tour tonight, because people like, I think, Louis Rees-Zammit, unless the Lions somehow go 2-0 up, I think, in the series, I don't think you'll see him in a Test team, unfortunately. But there you go, we'll see, and hopefully you enjoyed this video, you enjoyed the game as well.